Right, okay, so hello everyone, my name is Sam and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Job Costing Made Simple, where we're going to go over some of the fundamentals that we believe make up a really good job costing system and why we believe it is the number one unfair advantage you can give yourself as a GC or a subcontractor, and why we are so obsessed with building beautiful, easy to use software that enables our clients to do this as simply and cost effectively as possible. So a little bit about your host today. My name is Sam Dolbel. My background is in construction. I cut my teeth in the trades doing spec houses, and I ended up running a temporary structure company, which was actually the reason why we started SINC. We needed a system for tracking labour internally and job costing, and we couldn't find anything that was really affordable and easy for the guys to use. If you're wondering where my accent is from, actually originally from New Zealand, but don't let that fool you. We're very much focused on building software solutions for companies here in the US. SINC itself is an American corporation based in Delaware. Each of these markers on this map represents a different unique company currently using our system, and these are the guys that we've been working with to gather feedback to really build out the job costing system. So very much US focused, and the majority of these stamps here are general contractors and subcontractors. So I mentioned earlier this concept of an unfair advantage, and I just want to dive into that a little bit more here because I believe it's just so important if you want to increase your chances of success. You know, you've probably heard figures thrown around similar to this, but around 30% of companies in the construction trades don't generally make it past the second year in business. And even in larger, more established companies, the failure rate in our industry is much higher than in others. There are a number of factors that contribute to these failure rates, and I'm going to go over a few of them here. But what you'll find is they mostly seem to tie back to very simple things like lack of data and insight into job profitability. So this is one we are all too well aware of, and that is profit fade or scope fade, the scourge of the industry. I'm sure we've all been in this situation before. You bid on a job, you put a nice healthy markup of what you believe to be 20-25%, but then the job doesn't go quite as smoothly as you'd hoped. There are a few changes along the way, but you don't want to rock the boat with the owner, so you guys just figure that you're going to work it out at the end of the job. But along the way, things don't get documented, work gets forgotten about, and at the end of the job, you're left wondering, where did all the darn profit go? Another culprit that we've all been guilty of at one point or another is going under on our estimates and going in too low. We base our bids on the true costs of the project, but really we don't have the historical data needed to back those things up, and it's very difficult to do anything about this when you're midway through the project. You could try and change order your way out of it to profitability, but even that comes back to accurate job tracking, because you need to be able to show the owner at those owner meetings that you've done the work and present the timesheets and, build that trust for them to get those change orders approved. And finally, growth. Growth is the name of the game for just about all of us, but untracked growth is almost always the beginning of the end for subcontractors. I hear so many stories about guys going out and just bidding on absolutely everything they can get their hands on. Then they realize they've got too many irons in the fire and they just have to throw money and labor at the problems to get the jobs done. Wearing out the guys, wearing out the tools, and wearing out your credibility. There's no point in going out and having 4 or 5 jobs going on at one time if half of them aren't making you any money. What you want to do is you want to be able to pick the winners to bid on, and to do that you need that data. And that's where a lot of guys get caught up. They think it's just all about growth, get as much work as possible, and it's, like I say, the beginning of the end for all too many contractors. And the reason I think that all of this data job costing stuff is such an unfair advantage that you should put on your side is that historically it's been very hard and extremely costly for people to do this to this sort of level. You'd almost need a full-time admin person tracking those labor codes, working out where everyone is all day, and then reporting that back to you in a timely fashion. But with the software that's coming out now, it's all too easy and very cost effective. Now we come to my second to last slide, and that's the 5 key components of job costing. The 5 numbers that you want to have available at your fingertips, on your phone, on your laptop, instantly, to know the answer to at any one time. You start with your contract price. Now, plus or minus any approved change orders. Now, emphasis on the word approved. There's no point in having a bunch of unapproved pending change orders that the owner's just going to say, thank you very much at the end of the job. I really appreciate the work, but not pull out the checkbook. You've got your materials. You take off your overheads and your labor cost, and what's left is your profit. Pretty simple stuff, and the reason I'd imagine you guys are all in business today. Overhead, it's your lease of your warehouse, your office, your yard, your vehicles, your phones, and one aspect that a lot of people forget about is that the supervision costs on jobs are genuinely not attributed to labor, they are an overhead. And one other thing to remember, when you're doing job costing is you want to distribute your overhead evenly across jobs. So the key is to have your finger on the pulse and know what that number is at all times. And lastly, we come to the biggest item on my list, and that is labor. Labor is quite often the biggest profit and loss line item. And historically, accountants and business owners and managers have very little visibility into how this labor cost is distributed. Accurately assigning labor costs by the minute to the job, and more importantly to the cost code, is often the missing piece inside most of the systems that are available today. So, what exactly goes into a good labor tracking system? The thing to remember about construction work is it is one of the most data-rich industries here in the US. But historically, we've been very poor with doing anything with that data. Think about all the spreadsheets, emails, all the slips that are sitting inside Dropboxes on your site. Nothing ever happens with that data. It all just lives in silos, and that's something that we're trying to put an end to. And it's one thing getting that data, but you've got to make sure it's accurate. Rubbish information going into a system is only going to put out rubbish. And we find that the most accurate way of getting data is getting it in real time as it happens. Not at the end of the week when everyone's forgotten what they're working on, and not even at the end of the day. We get it as the job's done, as the task is done in real time. And the best way to get that data is not by, a manager or foreman on the site. It's actually from the staff themselves as they're doing it. Cost coding is incredibly important and something that a lot of people don't do. And what we have done inside SINC is we've enabled it to be job specific. So, if anyone who's familiar with commercial construction will be well aware of the CSI master format codes, and they can be very overwhelming. But what we've done is we've created a library that's sitting there when you open up the job costing module, and you're able to select CSI master format codes and allocate them to specific jobs. So you might only be a company who's tracking, say, 10 cost codes. But why not use industry standard cost codes that you're going to hand into your general contractor, and just think about how happy he's going to be able to match those codes directly up to the project specifications. And just finally, the last thing I want to talk about is technology. Think about all of your staff who are walking around right now, and how many of them haven't got a powerful computer sitting inside their pocket. It's just the age that we live in, and we want to make the most of that. But as with implementing any new software, it really has to be very simple and easy to use. And that's our philosophy here at SINC. Is, everything that we put out, any level employee needs to be able to just pick it up and intuitively know how to use it. Because if you implement a system and, one or two guys aren't following it, the whole thing breaks down. And the last thing I want to talk about is just offline capabilities. You don't want to be stuck out in the field with something that's totally relying on an internet connection. If your crew's out working in the middle of nowhere, we want to make sure that all the data that they're collecting during the day is going to be synced up as soon as they get back into reception. That's at the core of all the software that we put out. I know we've got thousands of users. A lot of you guys are here with us today, and you've been waiting very patiently and submitting all your feedback. I'm just super excited to walk you through this and offer this service to everyone. For those of you who are already using SINC, you're going to notice a couple of new items here in the main menu: libraries and jobs. So right now we're going to create our first job. So we're going to click in here, and we're going to select Add Job. Now let's start by giving this job a name. In this particular case, we're going to be building a retaining wall on our Jackson Pike site. Then we have the option to enter a job number. So I'm just going to use the invoice number for now, and then I'm going to go ahead and enter the address for the job. Now, one of the really powerful tools that we have built is the ability to assign tasks to your jobs. And we will be going into more detail on that soon, but for now I'm just going to start by adding some tasks that I want my staff to see when they're opening their app. I give the task a name. In this case we're going to be completing the grade work to reach the final slopes. Then I have the option to add in more details for the task here. There are 5 tasks that I want my crew to complete today, so I'm just going to fast forward while I enter them all in. Now that all the details of this job are there, all I need to do is click on Add Job. And if I go into my jobs list, we can see it here. Now I only have one job in the system right now, but I want to point out that there is an option to easily search for jobs here. So if I had a bunch of projects on the go, we could easily look them up by job number or job name. Now let's switch over to what the employee sees from their app. I've just arrived at the yard, and I'm ready to start the workday. So the first thing I do is I start my shift. Then I select Start Job, where I will then see a searchable list of all the jobs that the admin has created. So right now we only have one job in the system, so I'm going to select the retaining wall project we created earlier. And now you can see from my status that it has changed to On Job. If I click into the job detail, you will see all the info available, and I have the option here to open a map and get directions right from inside the app, which is a feature that a lot of you guys have been asking for, so I really hope that everyone enjoys it. Now let's say that I have now arrived at the Jackson Pike site, and I want to see the tasks that are there for the day. I tap up on the tasks, and then I can go into the descriptions and then mark individual tasks as complete. The next section I want to show is notes. These notes are intended for easy cross-company communication and are included in all the reports that we will be generating later. Here I see that there has already been a note left regarding what concrete blocks I should be using for this job. But let's say that I wanted to add a note. This is really important as it acts as a permanent record of things that happen throughout the job that you can easily go back and look at later when needed. One particularly important type of note you should really encourage your employees to leave is whenever clients have changes to the scope of the project. And while everyone's going to have their own internal processes for submitting change orders, these notes can be critical later down the line when trying to get paid. Now let's take a look at how employees can manage their breaks inside the new system. We've been getting asked for months for the ability for employees to be able to clock in and out of breaks while on shift, and not just having to rely on the company-wide automatic break rules. And I'm really happy to announce that we have listened, and this is now a new feature inside of jobs. The employee simply selects Begin Break, then chooses the break that they have qualified for based on the time spent on shift, and then when they go to end the break and get back to work, the system then asks them if they would like to resume the job that they were working on or start a new job. Now I want to take a quick look at the admin version of the mobile app, just to show you that all of the features we went through on the web version demo earlier on are all available here in the app too, for those of you who prefer to manage their companies on their phone. So if we go into the jobs items on the main menu, we will see our list of jobs here. Down the bottom we have a summary view of all the jobs, where we can quickly see how much time and money has gone into each one so far. And if we want, we can generate a summary and send it to our email address by clicking on the gear icon below. Here we have a list of all the tasks, and if we click on the history, we can see a log of who was responsible for what and when. We can see here that Lloyd marked this particular task as complete on Friday at 9:28 AM, and this is a really useful bank of data that we can go back and look at. If we tap on the notes, we can see that the note we left our staff regarding the blocks and the note that Lloyd left regarding the owner's change to the scope is all here. And if we go back into the individual job detail, we have the option to export an Excel sheet with all the details relating to that job to our email. I will show you what those reports look like later on when we jump back on the web version. Now let's head back to the admin view of the web version of SINC, where I'm going to quickly go over the importance of cost codes. For those of you just starting out with cost codes, the easiest way to think of them is that they are jobs within jobs, where the overall job might be building the retaining wall, but we want to track all the individual phases in building that wall so that we can really accurately see where we're spending most of our labour and where we can increase efficiencies. So I am now on the libraries item in the main menu, and I have begun making a cost code group for this retaining wall job. And what's so cool about being able to group these codes and apply them to specific jobs is that your employees don't get overwhelmed by the sheer number of codes you might be using across all of your projects, and it reduces the chances of work being inaccurately allocated. We still have one more code we want to add to this group, so what we will do is we will select Add Code, and from here we can either manually enter our code based on our internal system, or if we click up here on Use Standard Codes, we are given access to the latest version of CSI Master Format, where you can choose from industry recognized cost codes and apply them to your project. And if we click here on Code Groups, we can see that the group was just created. Now, let's go back into the Jobs item in the menu and select our retaining wall job up at Jackson Pike. If we click on Cost Code Groups, we're giving the option to apply a group to this job, and a drop-down list appears of all the groups that we have available, but I have only created one so far, and that is all that is showing. Another powerful grouping feature we have built is the task groups. This is particularly useful for repetitive tasks that you may want to apply to multiple jobs. In this case, I have a list of tasks regarding the parking of company vehicles at the end of the workday that I use across most of my jobs, so I'm going to add that to this job. You will see it here, and you can expand it to see each individual task. Let's take a look and see how the employee interacts with cost codes from the mobile app. Just like before, when they start a job, they are presented with a list, but now there's an option for them to choose a cost code. So if they go ahead and add one, they're presented with a list of codes, and these are the codes that the admin has assigned to the specific job. Later in the day, the employee decides to take a break, and when they're done, they resume the same job they're working on. But as the day progresses and their tasks change, they're given the option to edit these cost codes so they can change it with the work that they're doing. Finally, let's take a look at the two different types of job summaries that you can export. The first is an overview summary, which is basically just all of your jobs rolled into one report. You will see that there are multiple tabs inside of the spreadsheet that we send you, the first being an overview of all of the jobs, then an individual tab for each specific job, followed by a tab for each individual cost code, and finally all of the notes uploaded to your jobs. The second report is a job detail summary, which is laid out in a similar way to the job summary, but specific to one particular job. One thing that is different about this report though is that we include a tab for each individual employee who worked on this job.
You know, ever since we launched SINC a couple of years ago, it's been our goal to be the very best at job costing, but it just turned out that to be the best at job costing, we first had to get the time and attendance piece right. And that just took a long time, and we really appreciate those thousands of you out there who have been patiently waiting for this feature to be released, and can't imagine how happy we are to have it in your hands. But the job is not done yet, and we'll be continuing to add more features and improve on the workflows, so please go ahead and start using it today. Keep sending that feedback through, and reach out to us on the live chat, because we think we've done the best job that we can, but we need to get that feedback from you guys to be constantly improving things. And for those of you who are new to SINC and you want to know how to try it out, well, we have free, risk-free 30-day trials on all of the paid plans. You can visit our website, sinc.business, or download either of the mobile apps on the App Store and the Play Store. And with that, I want to say thank you again for being here today. We really look forward to hearing your feedback. Bye for now.